Hello and welcome to episode 19 of SAAB Fever. My name is Frank, and in today's episode I'll be changing the valve cover on the 9.5 project car. The first thing to do with this job is to remove the direct ignition cartridge on top of the engine. It's relatively easy, it's 4 bolts hold it in and an electrical connector on the far side. I'm having a good look at it here. This is actually the first time I've taken it off. As you can see, it is a genuine cartridge. The date code there is showing the 9th week of 2010. So it's a good 11 years old. It probably got very little life left in it. You can see here there's quite a lot of oil been leaking out into the spark plug well here. I wasn't aware of this at all. The front of the engine is quite wet with oil, but even that was a surprise to me when I took the cartridge off. I'm just having a quick look around here to see what needs to come off. It's mostly just these Torx screws here on the top of the engine. The front 3 weren't even hand tight. I'm not surprised there was oil leaking out now. I removed the PCV pipe that runs from the pipes around the back. I'm also removing the electrical connector from the boost control valve, just so I can get it all out of the way. I don't recall exactly how many screws there are. It must be about the 15, maybe 16 mark. They're all quite obvious, there's none hidden. You do need to remove the PCV piping from the back. I removed the larger one first, because I completely forgot about the small one that goes in underneath. So if you're going to attempt this job, just take the entire nipple out. There's the point where I realised it wasn't going to go anywhere, so... As you can see, both the camshafts are now exposed. I'm just cleaning up some of the oil residue on the outside here. So here we can get a good look. Surprisingly clean, if a bit dark. Probably a sign this thing hasn't had too many oil changes over the years. I mean, you can see there's a bit of dirt there, but on the whole, I'm actually quite happy with it. Again, not seeing any build-up of sludge. Nothing to be overly concerned about anyway. It is a darker colour though, so this thing has had sort of extended oil changes. It hasn't had them frequently. I'm going to take the opportunity here just to check the timing chain, but it seems quite tight as well. Okay, here's the cam cover upside down. The first thing to do here is to remove the gasket. It's going to be stuck on quite well. These things, they seem to get just baked into place, really. I'm obviously using a pry tool here, but if you didn't have something like this, a small flathead screwdriver would do just fine. Since the cover's off, I'm also going to take the opportunity to replace the upper timing chain guide. I didn't particularly want to have to break it out, but I used the new one as a guide so I could see what it was supposed to look like. And if you lift the end, which would have been at the rear of the engine, you can actually then just push it out. Now, as you can see here, it's lost all flexibility. It's gone quite hard. It just snaps. Now here I'm trying to fish out. If anyone's been following this series so far, you'll remember I did the version 6 of the PCV upgrade on this car. And I suspected at the time that I'd broken the original nipple when I'd removed it from the valve cover here. So I was just fishing the parts out. As you can see here as well, obviously it's quite dark in there, so I can't really get any decent footage, but there does seem to be a bit of sludge in the top there, which makes me think I'm wondering also with how loose those screws were, if someone's been in here before. I might explain why the top of the engine looks quite clean, although there are some indications of sludge. Again, while it's all apart, I'm taking the opportunity to replace the blank that sits where on an automatic cart there would be a vacuum pump driven from the what is that? Oh, that's the exhaust camshaft, isn't it? Manual cars have a small blanking plate in there which sadly tends to leak oil. There are kits you can buy on eBay. In fact, I believe there's one you can buy where you don't even have to take the valve cover off. You just fit a replacement blank, sort of in addition to the factory one, I believe. But since I'm here, I'm just going to try and see if there's anything I can do to this original. Cleaning up the oil on it as best as I can. There are two little notches, so it does sit in a specific way. I assumed it was just a circle. This repair in particular, don't take my word for it. I really don't know if this will work. I'm not entirely sure what to use to try and create a better seal. So really I'm just using what I have available. What I'm using here is Loctite 518. Some of you may recognize this. This is what's used to seal the sump at the bottom of the engine. I got a tube of this stuff because I know I'm going to be taking the sump off this engine at some point. So I got a tube of this. I figure, well, there's a good chance it'll work. I mean, you use it to seal oil at the bottom of the engine, so maybe I can use it to seal oil at the top as well. Just a case of pressing it into place afterwards and then screwing it in. I didn't actually bother to look up the torque specs for this. It was stupidly tight when I was trying to undo it, so I just did it back up stupidly tight as well. I tried to do it in steps, so I wasn't just cranking one end down really tight and leaving the other end flapping or anything. The new timing chain guide slots into place quite easily. And on to the third item I wanted to deal with. I mean, I figured while I had it apart, I'd try and do this. There is mention of it in the workshop manual. Oddly enough, it's just listed. It's listed under, what section is it? I think it's faults, symptoms, and diagnosis. It's not actually a service bulletin, but it makes reference to these vent pipes being clogged. They tell you first to try compressed air. Now, at the time, I don't actually have a compressor, well, not a real compressor anyway. I have a very, very small one used for spray painting. So I figured I'd use the wire first. And I could tell pushing it in that it was catching. On that, the inner, I suppose we'll call that the innermost pipe there, it was catching quite badly. I move on to try the outer one and have a lot more success. I can get the wire in a lot deeper. In the end, I decided to use my small compressor and some fuel hose. It's actually listed. It so happens I had the 6mm fuel hose. It just so happens I seem to have some of that in the shed, so that was quite lucky, really. My little compressor's not up to much. I think it's only about 40, maybe 50 psi. But it is able to blow through that outer pipe, but not through the inner pipe. The air is just leaking out of the connections on the hose. I'm trying to fit the hose on a bit better here, but as soon as I squeeze the trigger, I can feel the air is now just escaping out of the other end of the hose and onto my hand instead. I get a small Jubilee clip and screw it on. Sadly, that doesn't seem to get me very far. Now that I've got a good connection on, now that I've got a good seal on both ends, when I pull the trigger, now just nothing happens at all. So the air isn't going anywhere. That pipe is most definitely clogged. As you can see here, the valve cover is upside down, which makes this particularly tricky. And in essence, I'm trying to use carb cleaner and hold the can upside down while spraying upward into the pipe. I'm not sure how much carb cleaner is actually coming out of this. It's probably very little, but I suppose every little helps. Then working the wire in again, back and forth, wriggling around. As I say, every now and then I get a little bit further in. Occasionally a chunk of something comes out. You see the fingers on my left hand there will get dirtier as this goes on. Every so often the wire gets in a little bit further. In a while I spray some more carb cleaner in again. Time to hook up the hose again, and still no joy. So back to the wire. I believe I've actually broken through all of the sludge now. Just checking to see how far in the wire seems to be getting. One last dab of carb cleaner and hook up the air hose again. And I can feel air coming through it now. Okay, back to the car with the newly cleaned out and also reconditioned valve cover. I'll be covering that in another video. This was probably the trickiest part of the entire job. I know it wasn't genuine SAAB. I think it might have been a Pro Parts Sweden valve cover gasket kit I got. A lot of people have trouble with the inner seal in particular around the spark plug well, but that went in and stayed in all by itself this entire time. The outer one was dreadful for me. I mean, it simply didn't fit. It just seems to be ever so slightly larger than the valve cover itself. We even tried positioning it here. I got the missus to help. Even just laying it out, my hope was, even if I can't get it to stay in place when it's in the valve cover itself, if we lay it out, maybe I can then just drop the valve cover onto it. But as you see here, by the time we line up the holes to the screw holes, it just doesn't fit. This may not entirely be their fault. It's been in the house for a little while now. It could have been stretched. A kid could have been playing with it. I don't know. In the end, it's the Loctite 518 to the rescue again. The route I decided to take in the end was I put some of that in a few key spots around. Sadly, I didn't get any footage of it. It's a shame. I wish I did. But with that in place, it was doing its best to hold the gasket where it's supposed to be. Then it was just a case of gently going around the entire valve cover. As I'm pressing down, I'm also making sure if the gasket's trying to escape out the back or the side, then I'm pushing it back in either with my finger or the sort of little pry tools that I tend to use. It may not be perfectly aligned at the moment, but I go around the entire valve cover putting its screws in. I'm not screwing them down. It's just enough to hold everything in place, then move on to the next one. Each time just checking that the gasket isn't trying to escape out the side. From here on out, really, it's just a reverse of disassembly. I start, again, I didn't really bother checking the correct torque specs. If that blanking plate on the side doesn't hold, there's a chance I may need to take all of this off again anyway. And given how loose some of those front screws were, just having any kind of torque will be better. Just one last visual check to make sure everything is sitting down as it should be. Checking that I haven't got any kind of pinched gasket sitting out the side anywhere. as I said here, it's just a case of putting everything back where I found it. Okay, I've got the engine running now. I'm not really expecting to see oil pouring out at this stage. Well, at least I hope not. I mean, it was never really visibly coming out anyway, but the front of the engine was soaking wet with oil. I imagine it probably only really comes out at higher RPMs or when it's warm and the pressure inside is built up or whatever. But I'm just making sure I haven't made any glaring error and there is oil pouring out anywhere. But all looks good. As always, thanks for watching.